I would start acknowledging this event and our participants who are spread all over Melbourne, are located in the lands of many traditional owners and custodians. We pay our respects to elders past and emerging. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eddie Boscariol. I'm a General Manager at Northlink. I'm responsible for implementing the federal government's local jobs program. The program has particular emphasis on reskilling, upskilling, and providing career pathways to job seekers in our northwestern Melbourne region. And the program has been developed to support Australia's economic recovery from COVID-19. If I ask that attendees please place questions for the panel in the chat, and I will put the question to the panel at the end of the panel discussion. I'd like to introduce our panelists for this morning's pre-event and panel discussion. I'd like to firstly welcome Nathan Reynolds, who is the Partnership and Business Development Lead at Leadership Victoria. Leadership Victoria is a social enterprise that has connected and empowered leaders across business, government, and community sectors, enabling them to exercise the leadership required to address today's complex challenges and contribute to positive economic, social, and environmental outcomes. Next, I'd like to welcome Ben Rodgers, who is the Executive Officer at Inner North Community Foundation. The Inner North Community Foundation manages philanthropic dollars to fund projects to create prosperous and connected communities in Melbourne's Inner North. In particular, they focus on projects to provide pathways to employment. And finally, I'd like to welcome Kerryn Lester-Smith, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Melbourne Polytechnic. Our very own Melbourne Polytechnic is accredited to deliver over 300 nationally recognised qualifications and more than 400 institute accredited courses in everything from accounting to equine studies, childcare to commercial cookery, fitting and turning to floristry and beauty therapy to meat processing. These study programs are delivered across seven campuses and additional specialist training centres throughout metropolitan Melbourne and country Victoria. They've got a broad range of courses that include pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, certificates, diplomas, advanced diplomas, associate degrees, bachelor degrees, and master's degrees. They are articulated pathways to university studies. Okay, so our topic is community resilience. How is the community coping as we emerge from COVID-19? So the first question that I have for the panel is, how do you view the impact of COVID and the lockdowns on Melbourne's North communities? Who'd like to go first?
Well, I can start.
All right, excellent.
I've actually recently did a study of the impact of COVID sort of across the state, and there's a number of factors that we look into in terms of the impact. There's economic employment factors. There's resilience factors in terms of people's ability to cope with external shocks like COVID, and those types of things are influenced by age, disability, underlying health conditions in the area. All of these things make a difference in terms of a community's ability to cope with things like COVID. Other things that are really important are to what degree does the community feel connected, both as a community, but also to people, to neighbours, to community groups, to faith groups, other types of groups in their area. And the stronger those connections, the more resilient communities are. So when we look at the inner north, the north, inner north and beyond out to Mitchell, there's a few sort of things that kind of stand out when looking compared to the rest of the state. And one of those things is that economically, the impact on jobs and the economy was broadly in line with the rest of the state, actually. So when we look at the impact of COVID, particularly over the first 12 months, there was actually a positive change in employment of about 0.6% across the state, and that's broadly in line with the northern or the areas covered under the Northlink program. So where I think some particular population groups were affected, particularly in young people. So if you look at Hume, there's 1 in 4 people in Hume are under the age of 18, and so there is a large impact on that population group, given the casual nature role of employment for young people. Casual retail jobs, gig economy type jobs, cafe, service, restaurants, all these types of jobs, disappeared under COVID. So that population group in particular, I think, has felt a big impact. Also, that population group tends to be, I guess, more affected by mental health, and their mental health resilience is actually lower in younger people than what it is in older people. And there's a few reasons for that, but social connectedness is one of those areas. So people younger ages, people really need and look for opportunities for social connection, and those opportunities dried up, of course, during COVID, and that was a big impact on that group. And as a result, what we saw is higher demand for mental health services amongst the younger population group. So, I would say that they're just some key things that stand out to me around the impact of COVID on the North.
Yeah, look, and the youth unemployment rate at the end of October was at 13%, which is far too high. But interestingly, after the first lockdown, it was as high as 16. It has come down, but it's still too high. And you're right, the lockdown significantly affected our young people and female cohorts significantly, because that's where all the jobs went. Yeah. Ben, how about yourself? What have you noticed?
Yeah, thanks, Eddie, and thanks, Nathan. It's great to be with you all this morning to think into both the impact of COVID on our community and also the ways that people have been stepping up and are stepping up across all sectors to respond and to give people dignity and support in times of crisis. And I think, the long thread of community response is that people in our community care, right? And so whenever crisis happens, business leaders and community leaders and people in government think about ways to stand alongside others to make sure that people have food on the table and have some that are standing in solidarity with others, which is what we've seen over the last 18 months. So the Inner North Community Foundation is a philanthropic funder, and some of the ways that we know about our community is through our grants program. And what we hear from the 898 charities that are registered in Melbourne's Inner North. So in March 2020, we started a COVID-19 disaster relief fund. And over the last 18 months, we've granted back over $600,000 to 180 community groups across the region. Some of those grants programs were for rapid response grants for community groups to respond to the impact of COVID in a wide variety of needs. So there were broad parameters about saying, let us know how COVID is impacting the people that you serve or the organisation that you work with, and how $1,500 will be able to respond. And we had a variety of things that people were needing in that space. And I think from that experience over the last little while, we've seen that emergency relief and making sure that people had food on the table was certainly critical. We saw the tech divide between people that had devices and access to devices was really critical for participating and understanding where the support systems were and how to engage in an online world. And we know that, community groups were supporting families that had multiple kids at home, only a few devices, parents trying to learn, parents trying to get to work, kids trying to learn online. And so if you didn't have good quality internet and devices to access that made it certainly difficult. And then, as Nathan has said, the stuff around mental health has certainly been exacerbated over especially the last 2 lockdowns. I think we also have seen that amongst the crisis and the hardship, there has been immense community leadership across sectors. And I think, it's interesting, Nathan, you talk about the sense of connection that people feel when they can plug into a community group and feel that they have a place to go to get support. And we are certainly blessed as a community, we're blessed for the leadership of local community groups that have been able to change their operating models in ways that still deliver services to people, that still give people hope and access to information in new and innovative ways, and I think over the last 18 months, the role of that leadership has certainly been really important and really critical. I think we've seen and we continue to see that people, some families and some individuals are in crisis and are figuring ways to navigate the challenges of COVID. But we've also seen that people have been really, really generous. So part of our response was funding emergency relief vouchers through local traders, and we funded about $60,000 worth of vouchers through local fruit and veg shops, pretty much, that where agencies gave vouchers to local families so that they had food on the table. And as part of that relationship, we had local businesses chip in themselves. We had the Sydney Road Traders Association come to us and say, we've got $5,000 worth of vouchers for our stores. We don't know how to get them to people. Can you help us out and make sure that that the communities that have supported businesses for a long time know that we're in it together. And I think that sense of localism is certainly strong and continues to play out.
Yeah, good points, Ben. Good points. And I was especially impressed on how business and the 3 levels of government and, not-for-profits and associations that work in this space all work together to help each other out. I think was a fantastic thing to see in the community. I'll then move over to Kerryn. Kerryn, what did you notice in the student population of Melbournes North?
Well, I think there was new opportunities for learning. TAFE's ultra-quick adaptation to online learning was very needed a lot of support for both staff and students. So students pivoting in and out, especially this year, of online learning, then back onto campus, and that was a real difficulty, and a lot of students needed extra support. I agree with Ben that there was a definite digital divide, and especially with the quality of internet, and also just the level of engagement that some people feel online learning provides. I think also the role of TAFE, not only during COVID, but now is supporting that domestic pipeline to universities as well. It's led to new partnerships, led to new opportunities for students, I think, in the community to see pathways through to university, and using TAFE as an opportunity to achieve that. there's also new ways that I think students saw opportunities in different industries. So obviously with healthcare, we saw an increase in students inquiring about healthcare courses, community services, a lot of career changes, job seekers, so different cohorts coming into our TAFE community, and so that was really interesting. And obviously they require different supports as well, so we've had to think and review what we're providing in relation to supports for students. I think that the only other thing that I'd mention was the in and out of the lockdowns really affected, just to reiterate that really affected our students, I think. And as Ben already mentioned, the juggle between families and jobs and then on campus and then off campus, and navigating the internet as well on top of that was pretty tricky for a lot of people. So that's all I would have to say on that.
I was wondering, Kerryn, have you noticed more mature age people coming to reskill and upskill in cases of wanting a change in their career after these lockdowns?
Yeah, anecdotally, I don't have the specific numbers to quantify that, but definitely anecdotally, there's a new cohorts. I wouldn't just say mature age, but career changes, even people seeking interest in different short courses as well, that we probably wouldn't have seen. We've had lots of different inquiries from probably cohorts that probably wouldn't enter into short courses, for example, because maybe they didn't know that we offered short courses and such a variety. So yeah, it's been quite interesting.
Oh, thank you.
I think Eddie, over the one of the things that I've seen is that amongst all the pace and the change and the turbulence, for some people there were opportunities to reflect and to think about what it is that they were wanting to do, and so it created space for people to make choices to, think about new things like going to TAFE and exploring a passion project or exploring new careers. And I think some of the impacts of COVID are really nuanced around some of the impacts. The impact of mental health on young people, yes, absolutely, has been really hard on young people. But for some young people, particularly kids in VCAL courses that didn't really feel at home in a mainstream school environment, the feedback from some of the teachers that we work with was that those young people really thrived in an online environment because they didn't have to navigate the challenges of the schoolyard and could just get on with learning and getting involved with stuff. Those students that were in mainstream classes that had never experienced stress and anxiety were, experiencing it for the first time, and that really has hit people really hard, and I think those impacts will continue to ripple out for some time, as we know.
Excellent. We've got a question from Philip Bain. What should we be advocating for in the North and outer North in the wake of these outbreaks?
I can take that one. So, look, I think I was looking at what the City of Hume are doing around COVID-19 recovery and sort of, they call it a COVID-19 recovery and reactivation plan. And largely, I think what they're doing is on point, and I think points to what other municipalities and community groups should be advocating for. So it broadly falls around creating a feeling of safety and connection within community, and anything that you can do to create that will lead to a more resilient community. People need to feel safe, people need to feel connected, and people need to have trust in each other and also the institutions in their communities, so that they can engage proactively and productively with them. So that's things like, community participation in groups of sporting facilities, recreation facilities, anything that gets people out and about, pathways, cycleways, anything that creates a feeling of safety within the community. Obviously services to address any immediate impacts from employment through to mental health services, all these types of things that lift a community's ability to cope with external shocks. You also really need to be looking at incentives for businesses as well, and that's happening across the municipality. But so really the areas of advocacy are around health, connectedness, safety, trust, and community engagement more broadly, I would say.
And I would build on that, Nathan, and g'day and good morning, Philip. Good to have you in the room. I think we know from the work that we do that community groups rely on the blood, sweat, and tears of people rolling up their sleeves to get involved. And that it's not, people are the program, right? We need to invest in the community, the human capacity to have leadership and have contributions for the things that they care about. And I think one of the things that we see is around the ability of local groups to keep on going through volunteer leadership and governance, and supporting and making it easier for those groups to navigate the next 18 months will be critical for their survival, because as things become tiring and people, we're all exhausted and we know that, and when it's palpable in the community, people are, relieved to be out and they're happy to be face to face. But, I think many people are looking forward to having a summer break where they can rejuvenate and connect to the things that are important for them. And if, without that sense of contribution from volunteers, our communities won't have that critical social infrastructure. So some of the investments, Philip, is around that social infrastructure, around how to make sure that the groups that knit our community together continue to play such a critical role as they always have, right? And just to make it easier for people, in particular in the next little while.
Can I also add? I think that's a really good, important point, Nathan. And I also want to make the point, Philip, that workforce development opportunities are going to be really critical to support businesses in returning. So we are fielding a huge number of inquiries from local businesses where they're trying to recruit students to support their workforce. So there is a lot of workforce demand. There's a lot of workforce demand especially in hospitality. So to try and build those businesses, understand where that workforce is going to come from, how do we incentivize the workforce to participate and in those businesses, whether it's through training or through other means. But it is there are a significant amount of inquiries coming through us, and I'm really are going to be supported to meet that workforce demand.
Okay, thanks, Kerryn. We've got another question. Now we're short on time, so we could probably get some quick responses. But from Tom Milliken, some people seem reluctant to come out after the restrictions. How do we get everyone out from their homes and back into the community?
Well, interestingly, I was at the school gate yesterday at pickup, and people are starting to talk about those rapid tests, 15-minute COVID tests. So things like that, if we could, but they're expensive, right? They're like, is it $12 for a pack of 2 or something? If we could somehow make these things more affordable and more available, I think that will coax people out, because one of the comments was, I want to take my kids to see the Maya windows in the city, but I'm worried about COVID. And so I think there's a great sentiment about that, particularly with, COVID going through younger population groups at the moment. But things like those test kits will be important for people.
Ben, anything from?
I think anything that brings people together to make it easy to do that. I think about our friends at Merry Health up in Fawkner run a program for Harmony Day every year, where local people can run a Harmony Day event, and they individuals get supported with up to $500. What I love about this program, apart from the great social cohesion and the ability to bring people together at a street level, is that the funding is given in preloaded Visa cards. So it's not cash. It's not, so they're handing over essentially a voucher that helps somebody run a barbecue, and then they sign a stat deck saying, we've used the funding to run a community event like we said we would. So the application process is really simple. The funding gets to people really easily, and it's a really easy way, with a couple of $100 to say to a street, let's have a street party, let's bring everyone together and just check in and see how people are going, and to remove some of those barriers that some people might feel, and to incentivize, right? So I think some of the feedback from our grants, so our grant program was up to $1,500, which is a lot of money and it's nothing, right? And for feedback from some groups was just the faith that we had to those volunteers meant that they had a responsibility to keep going, and they had somebody believed in them that they were doing a good thing, and that meant that they unlocked all this other volunteer contribution and donations and all this other great community stuff, because they felt an obligation to continue with the work that their community group does. So small amounts of money can really help incentivize people, particularly in vulnerable communities.
And Kerryn, your 1-minute pitch for that response?
I think the confidence, to bring people together. We're trying to do that in campus life as well, and it is tricky. I think the main thing is that you reassure people that there are the processes and procedures in place that will support them to come out. And I think I think it's a slow process. I don't think you can just flick a switch and everyone will just come back out. I don't think that's going to happen. But if we slowly lead by example and start with those outdoors safe events and meetings outside, then I think we'll get there in the near future.
All right, thanks, Kerryn. Look, I think we've run out of time. I'd just like to close by firstly thanking Nathan, Ben, and Kerryn for offering their valuable time and sharing their knowledge, insights, and expertise. Also, I'd like to thank you all for attending the pre-event panel room and networking session. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the NBAA Grand Final virtual breakfast, and I thank you. See you later. Bye.